Okay, so for the record, this is the Fairfield Economic Development Commission meeting of January 6th. This is a special meeting. We're conducting the meeting via Zoom at 8:30 a.m. Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. We also have Commissioners Ken Hockhauser, Steve Rosato, Matt Rappaport, Justin Beck, and Chairman Kevin Lesko. We also have Don Peterson, a former member of the commission, as well as Beverly Ballas from the Chamber of Commerce. And with that, I'll turn things over to you, Kevin, for any New Year's greetings or welcome, and then we'll go into our business agenda.
And in fact, Happy New Year to everyone. I do hope it is a very healthy and prosperous and happy New Year for everyone. Thank you all for coming in. And I know we have a lot to do, so I'm going to turn it right back over to Mark as we call to order. What I'd like to do is start by having a approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Aye. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Now, Mark, do we want to just jump right into elections, consideration in elections, or do you want to move?
Yeah, there's two primary business items today. One is to elect officers for the 2022 term. Typically, we have a chair and vice chair to basically organize the meeting in the absence of the chair. So certainly entertain any nominations or motions with respect to our officers for the 2022 year.
Nominate Kevin if he is inclined to continue in his role. He's done a great job in stewarding us along, and but I don't know if there's any conflict in commitments and time. But if he's interested, I'm interested in nominating him to continue as chair.
Okay, is there a second on the nomination?
I'll second it.
Okay, Ken.
Yep.
Kevin, are you okay with serving as chair?
I am okay for serving as chair for another year, and we'll take it from there. And that's great. I would like to also have Steve consider being vice chair if he would consider that. His time and talent over the years has been terrific, and I think he would make an excellent asset for this committee if he was able to do that.
I'm happy to accept that as well.
Is that a second there from Ken? Okay.
Yep.
Well, so we have nominations for chair and vice chair. Are there any other nominations on the floor? If not, we can close nominations and move to a vote, and we can do them together. Chair and vice chair, Mr. Lesko and Mr. Rosato. Everyone in favor say aye or raise their hand.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so there we have our chair and vice chair. Congratulations to you both. I'll notify the town clerk accordingly, who is hounding me for who she can track down for next year in terms of your agendas and meeting minutes and the like. So thank you very much. The other main order of business is we have been discussing internally making some changes to our zoning regulations as it relates to outdoor dining. We actually have a fairly light regulatory footprint as it relates to outdoor dining, but it does, typically when you create additional patron floor area or patron space, you need to provide additional parking. And there is currently an offset or an allowance of 150 square feet of outdoor dining space without making additional provisions for off-street parking. That's a pretty small area. And, with the pandemic, we've had one of the silver linings, I guess, is that we've had a 2-year experiment in terms of just how much parking is actually needed for these types of food service restaurant operations. And I think, amongst ourselves internally, and even probably amongst some of the commission members, there's a feeling that some of our parking requirements in certain areas may be more than what we actually need. I mean, there's a market-driven reality. You know, businesses obviously need to provide a certain amount of parking spaces, not just for their employees, but for their patrons. And that tends to be higher than in a suburban or rural area than it does in an urban environment. So we understand that people still like to drive their cars and need to find a parking space, and are less inclined to walk great distances to get to the place that they want to go. But downtown, in particular, a lot of the restaurants, and I think everyone would agree, we have a very vibrant dining scene downtown, which wouldn't exist without benefit of variances, which are granted routinely for most, if not all, restaurants for off-street parking. So anytime you have a situation where the standard practice is to grant a variance, you have to question whether or not the regulatory scheme is perhaps needs to be adjusted. And so I think, you know, again, with the pandemic, we loosened our regulations to provide temporary provisions. We had an application process and allowed people to create and expand outdoor dining areas, not just downtown, but throughout town. In some cases, we had restaurants taking up, using existing parking spaces to create outdoor dining areas. To our knowledge, I've checked with planning and zoning. There have been no real issues or complaints or problems associated with that. And the public has responded very well. People like having additional options, especially in the midst of pandemic. People are still eating outside, even on very cold, blustery days. The restaurants obviously enjoy it too. And our experience has also been that, you know, most people, if it's a nice day, they're going to eat outside. If it's rainy, they're going to obviously not choose to do that and eat inside, and or cold, too cold for the element, you know, for comfort. So it's not typically all of the above. It's one or the other, depending on conditions. So again, our thought, again, based on the experience we've had the last couple of years, we've had restaurants expand their outdoor dining locations, create new ones. And the median in terms of that size is around 450 to 500 square feet. If I take out some of the outliers like Nutmeg Bowl, which basically created an outdoor dining space under their parking structure, which is 14,000 square feet. I don't know if you saw that on the list, but if you take that out of the mix, the median or the mean is around 500 square feet. So our thought was the biggest regulatory issue or impediment or challenge is parking. And so we, myself, working with planning and zoning staff, thought that we'd like to propose to the Planning and Zoning Commission an amendment to our regs to increase the allowance for free outdoor dining space without provision of additional parking from 150 square feet to 450 square feet, or tripling it. And then there's some other provisions you'll see in the regs that make reference to the fact that, you know, a certain percentage of the dining patron area has to be inside the building. To my knowledge, that has never been enforced. It's kind of impractical. In fact, it's not uniformly in our industrial zone. We don't make any reference to it, but allow restaurants to exist, including outdoor dining space. So that's more of a cleaning up our regulatory scheme. But the big change would be increasing it from 150 to 450 square feet. And then administratively, typically as a condition of approval, the commission has required an annual recertification, which we think is unnecessary. And talks with the commission, no one's ever been denied recertification. There's been no issue of that. So again, it's more of a streamlining of the process and being more efficient in terms of the utilization of the commission's time and resources. And the same holds true with regard to the season. the season used to be April to October. And again, there are people, we have days, for whatever reason, we have days in November, December, January sometimes that, people are comfortable eating outside with or without heat lamps and the like. And we don't see any reason why we should prescribe an outdoor dining season. Just let the customers and the restaurants determine what suits them best, because the impact is really the same.
Do you anticipate
So
any pushback?
those are the changes that we're proposing. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
Do you anticipate any pushback in proposing that to the zoning commission?
Well, we've had some conversations preliminarily. I think, there might be some discussion about what is the appropriate allowance for additional outdoor dining area without provision for parking. 450, we came up with that based on the survey of existing temporary outdoor dining locations and taking the midpoint. We thought that would be appropriate, but others may have a different view. But I think generally the consensus would be 150 square feet seems small, and we can increase that, and we don't need to have restaurants provide additional parking to do that. And I think that's the main point and thrust. And if we can make some of these other changes along the way, that would be great. I'm proposing that this board make the application to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've done that before, most recently with movie theater regs. And it's not that the Planning and Zoning Commission couldn't make their own amendment and consider it themselves, but sometimes it's helpful for them to, kind of retain their regulatory sit in judgment type approach, and then might open it up to conversation. But I think there is general consensus around we can make it a little easier for restaurants to have outdoor dining. Everyone seems to think this is a good thing. We should encourage it. Restaurants like it. The public likes it. I think the commission is looking to do something here, and I think it's a pretty modest step. So I'm hoping that you guys agree. But that's.
I mean, I strongly agree. It should be easier. I mean, we don't need to get in the way of businesses being able to, like, when they're struggling at this point in time, and a number of them have had to close just because of the pandemic. Anything we could do to support them, I think makes sense. I don't see that there's much of a safety issue. Like, I go to the castle with some frequency. That is a tough parking lot with a lot of restaurants in there. And like, if you have to, you'll park, a little bit down the street down there and walk up. That's a case where you could make a case. But I've never seen any issues there. There's not accidents in the parking lot. It's not a safety issue.
People will find another restaurant if they need to find another restaurant to go for parking as well. So I mean,
that's been our philosophy for a while, that parking tends to be a little bit self-regulating. If you can't find parking that's convenient to you, whatever your level of tolerance is, then you're just going to move on, and maybe you go to a different place of business. But I think the commission is slowly coming around to revise and ease some of its parking regulations. I do think that we do need to have some parking requirements. I don't think we're quite like a Hartford or Stanford where you can just say, you don't have to do anything, let the market decide. I don't think we're quite there yet. It's not that kind of environment, but in this case, I think it does make sense to make it a little easier. So
I think it makes sense to have our commission submit the application. It does afford planning and zoning the opportunity to have an arm's length look at this. I think that becomes one of our
Duties,
capabilities for our commission to be able to help them. Mark, just another quick question on it. Like moving forward into equalizing parking requirements. Is this good to in that ultimate goal to do that, or should we actually ask them to also consider equalizing the parking between retail, office, and restaurant?
Thank you for bringing that up. It is there is a parallel amendment. We wanted to keep this kind of separate, but we are also considering, and again, the commission has conducted a planning study which recommended, amongst other things, making some changes to equalize parking requirements between retail and food service retail. And the reason being that allows property owners and landlords to flip back and forth and entertain new tenancies without, having to go back through and seek additional zoning approvals to entertain a different use. They still have to go through a change of use application, but that can typically be handled administratively. So that's going down a separate path because it's tied up with some other recommendations in terms of, as you'll recall, in the center design business district, we currently allow 5-story, 50-foot tall buildings. Our planning study actually had recommended changing that to a 4-story, 52-foot building. So keeping the height basically the same, but reducing the number of stories and modifying the FAR requirement to allow for redevelopment to occur. And that is part of a broader conversation. And I think that too, I've offered this commission as a vehicle by which we could have that conversation. Well, if the commission wants to take it up themselves, the Planning and Zoning Commission, they're more than capable of doing that. But as you said, sometimes it's helpful to have, whether it's this commission or another entity, propose something so they can kind of sit back in judgment, make tweaks to it depending on what other stakeholders, what their response is. But it's going down a separate path. So for the time being, I want to focus just on the outdoor dining. It's a very discrete issue. We did survey restaurant operators and asked them for their thoughts, and I'd certainly solicit some further support letters as it goes to public hearing from them, because I believe that many did see this as extremely helpful for their business survival. And, I think there's support for it within the industry and the public. So hopefully it'll find a receptive audience with the commission as well.
Okay, so really this is kind of like the skinny bill.
Yes, it's a skinny bill, and I'll bring I'll keep you posted on the other one, because I'm trying to move that one quickly too.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept Mark's request and create a proposal to submit to the Planning and Zoning?
I have a question before we vote.
Yes, Ken.
Do we want to target a different number other than 450? Do we want to take advantage and shoot for 500, 550? What are other towns doing that, we could emulate and has been, approved by their, legislative bodies? I don't want to, lose an opportunity if there's a greater opportunity to reduce that, car density.
Yeah, a couple things. I'm not sure. I've talked to some of my colleagues, and I think we're, again, kind of at the forefront here. We've had a long history of, at least in Connecticut. And if I look outside the state, there's other people that are doing things a little bit more progressively. So internally, I think we're at the vanguard here. And we've had a long tradition of supporting outdoor dining. The 450, again, I think there is a basis that I can show how we came up with that number.
Okay.
I do think there is, the commission may decide 450 is too rich for their blood. So there is that risk. I think you're pointing it. So it's a little bit, I even had that with staff, which was, hey, maybe we should go 300. And I said, no, let's do 450. I can argue why we're at 450. And if
Yeah.
they want to reduce it to 300, at least we've moved
Right.
the needle somewhat. So there is a method to the madness. And I think there is, to your point, probably there's some room for negotiation, but I think, 450, I think we can hold our hat on and say, hey, this is based on our analysis of the existing spaces, which have not created any problems.
Gotcha. So you feel the 450 is highly defensible and probable of approval?
I think it's highly defensible. I feel reasonably confident we can get
Okay.
approval.
All right.
But
So
it's not a slam dunk by any stretch.
great. So from a negotiating standpoint, because you can always negotiate downward, you can't
Yeah.
negotiate upward. Why don't you start at 550 and negotiate, through, negotiation, get to your target number? I mean, would you consider that? Or would the board
If
consider?
the commission feels more comfortable with taking a higher number, I can certainly build around that. So if you want to put forth that, that was part of my thinking too, which is why I was around 450. I mean, I could see 500. We had the number was 488, I think.
Right.
So round up instead of round down, say 500.
I think that's great and something to consider, for the purpose of just negotiating to get to our target number. May I ask a few questions? So recertification, what is that? Is that planning, fire, life safety? What does the certification require?
It's a strictly a land use issue. So they still have to get, whatever, if they need a building permit or a fire marshal sign off because they're erecting a tent structure, they still need to do that. So that's not a life safety issue, it's a land use issue. And
Gotcha.
there's no need to do that really. And the commission has never denied one. So again, why waste time? Why go through that effort? It can be handled administratively.
Gotcha. So this is kind of a bureaucratic annoyance, right? Just an
Yeah.
extra layer of business.
Right.
So does the town allow self-certification?
No.
Is that something the town would consider in a global,
I think, self-certificate, I think basically, they should be allowed to continue unless there's an issue. And if they
Gotcha.
have an approval, why does it need to sunset unless there is some issue? So I don't think that the planning and zoning staff are gonna require that level of, it's not in the zoning regs, it's more of a recommendation to modify their conditions of approval such that, they don't require annual recertification, there's no outdoor dining defined season. Some of the other conditions of approval, like they don't allow currently outside music.
right?
I mean, that you may want to keep that because that can be an annoyance for, depending on where that restaurant's located. So
Yeah, no, that's cool, and I understand that. So I'm trying to think of a lot of municipalities are moving to self-certification, right? Building plans, interior fit and finishes, more for the retail end, and maybe some office fit outs, not for new developments, obviously, but those type of things. So it reduces, build time, it reduces fees, it reduces, bureaucracies. Is there a desire on your part to introduce self-certification on a more townwide level? And by kind of using this as your wedge, this becoming an opportunity to start the discussion, and because municipal change it takes a long time, do we want to add some self-certification requirements into this or recommendations?
my sense was that would complicate things and we might get hung up on that whole conversation, which is a broader topic. And I wouldn't want to, have the perfect be the enemy of the good here. So I think, that is something we should strive for, to, again, reduce the regulatory scheme as much as possible, but this may not be the right mechanism to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm sorry, one other question. Fees. So what are there, just plan review fees?
There aren't any at moment there's typically a zoning application fee.
Gotcha.
And that has been waived with this temporary thing. So again, if they don't have to come back and certify, I don't think there's any fee for certification right now. It's just a bureaucratic process, as you said. So it's not going to impact the fees at all.
Gotcha. Does the town charge for use of public sidewalks?
It does.
Gotcha. Okay. And that still continues, correct? That hasn't.
Yes, that's a separate process. It typically requires a lease with the necessary approvals to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Other than my suggestion to, maybe.
Well,
ask for-
if you have other support to move that from 450 to 500, I'd be happy to take that up. So I agree with your philosophy. I mean, that's how I came up with the 450. But if you want to move it up a little bit higher to give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room, I'm totally cool with that.
Colleagues?
But before we address that, I have another question that's
Yes, Matt.
related. How integral to that number is the 6-foot spacing requirement? And does that go away once the pandemic's at another stage and then suddenly we've got way more volume than the 450 currently allows? Or do we think that 6 feet's about what they're going to do anyway, so it doesn't really change anything?
For clearance for sidewalks?
No, for the space between tables.
That's a good question. That is a temporary pandemic driven discussion. I don't know that we prescribe that, and that's very difficult for us to enforce. It's more the issue even now. I think, it's complaint driven. So if people call the health department and say, these tables are too close, they'll go out and check, and they would check it as part of their annual licensing certification. But from a land use perspective, I don't think that's an issue. It would allow them, effectively, if that was reduced, they could create more, there'd be more seating.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, at some point, I assume that will go away, although maybe that's
Probably as a requirement, it probably will. Yeah, because that's strictly pandemic driven.
So do we know if that goes away, does that go down to 3 feet and there's 50% more seating in these 450 square
Well,
foot?
it could, and again, that's a good point for me to have an answer for when we start debating whether 450, 500, or whatever is the right allowance for parking. I think that, again, to my earlier point, some of this becomes self-regulating. Again, our experience has been with outdoor dining versus indoor dining. People either opt for one or the other. It's not this plus this. If it's a nice day, they sit outside. If it's a bad day, they go inside. It's not, they fill up both the indoor and outdoor space. So I think the parking's fine, but
Right.
I think that will also self-regulate though, just based on staffing issues. I can't tell you the number of restaurants that I have been to or people I've talked to just saying they don't have the staff. So right now.
Well, that is an issue right now, for sure. And so that would also limit, and not every restaurant, this doesn't give restaurants carte blanche to basically take their parking spaces. I mean, that is a temporary COVID thing. So this is not space that's dedicated for that use. You still have to provide appropriate clearance. If you're on public land, you have to get the requisite leases. So I don't want to make this like there's gonna be this explosion of outdoor dining. I just think it moves the needle in the right direction in terms of making it a little easier for people that have the room to do that on their property, to expand that without, creating unnecessary parking spaces.
Yeah, I think we're also, for that to really be a problem, we'd have to have a lot more people coming to dine here. And I don't think this is going to drive people from Manhattan to come have dinner in Fairfield for the night and suddenly we'll be overflowing everywhere.
Where would they stay?
Oh, that's for our next meeting.
So just to put perspective on it, if you're looking at a 24 by 24 square, so 4 6 by 6 squares, where you would have tables of 4. That's 16 people, but that's 576 square feet in order to have that 6 foot space between these tables. So you could quickly argue that 450 is not enough.
Well, or so you want to go with 550 then, to Ken's point? Happy to modify it. I'll craft an argument to support whatever number we come up with.
Well, so you could, I mean, if you look at it, if there's a 6 foot spacing, tables of 4,
Mhm.
6 by 6 squares, okay, and you're looking 24 by 24 square feet. Okay, so that's 576 square feet. You could actually make an argument for that, and then have them back you down off of that.
Yeah, and again, I was just taking the number based on our analysis of existing temporary and taking the midpoint, but there's a practical argument here too, that like you've laid it out. It doesn't preclude people from having larger outdoor dining spaces. It just means that when they do that, they're going to have to make some provision for parking.
Right.
And so, if you'd like to move that from 450 to 550 based on those practical considerations, as well as to support Ken's, well-founded theory that, there might be room for negotiation here. I'm happy to entertain a motion to amend that, and if that's what the commission would like to do, I'm good with that. I'm not going to argue.
We're adding 6 people to that space is my point. Which is really not a lot of people.
It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
So, commission, how does everyone feel about that?
I'm in favor of that. I like Ken's point of giving us a little wiggle room, and if there's a negotiation, they may be willing to bite on it, but at a lesser level. So I support it.
So what was the number? 550?
Oh, 576.
576?
Will give you the argument of a 24 by 24 patch that is four 6 by 6s together. And then
it's very precise.
Well, no, don't mind, because it's easy to explain to them. I mean, you can visualize it, so that each of those, that 24 by 24 will give you four tables of 4 tops. Okay, four tops, and so that would be 16 individuals. That would be safe spacing. So I mean, you're hitting all the good points. It's just easy for people to visualize this as you talk about it.
Well, I would suggest we come up with it's rare that you have a square.
Well, that's fine.
Everyone does 4 tops. So, I mean, usually you're taking, kind of weird locations. So
Yes.
I would suggest we come up with a round number. It's 550, 575, 600, 500, something. And it's not going to work for everyone, obviously. And people may still need to get some variance. On the other hand, if it's a foot off, I don't think anyone's going to be measuring that, as long as it's shown on a piece of paper that it complies. So I'm just, 576 sounds a little, I'd prefer like some kind of even integral number, that type thing.
You're selling it, Mark. Whatever you think is right.
What are we at? 550, 575? What are we doing here? Somebody want to make a motion to amend and see if you got enough of.
Motion to amend to 550.
All right.
Motion to amend to 575, not to one up you, Steve, but we could always go downward. You can't go upward.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All right. 575, going once, going twice. Anyone in favor of 575?
Sold.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mark, I would just run the numbers so that if someone does ask what happens if that 6 feet goes down to 3, it's only going to be a small number additional people. So if that's
a very good point. Thank you, Matt, because part of it is preparing, because I get grilled on these. So it's good to have you guys ask those questions.
I can't imagine it'd be more than a handful. Two more
I gotta have all my answers, right off the top of my head when it comes up. So
Right.
appreciate it.
Can I ask a general municipal question? So are there occupancy levels where above a level of occupancy, you need special permitting?
Well, that's probably a fire code issue. Yeah, I know there are occupancy loads. That's indoor space. I'm not sure about outdoor locations, but that would be a code related question for my counterparts in the fire marshals and building departments. It's
Okay.
usually, we don't have a local, it's a state code
It's a state code. Okay.
or an international, code that the state has subscribed to. So it's not something Fairfield specific. We're not New York.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to know if it triggers any occupancy issues, by
I don't
having,
think so. No.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll touch base with my friends over in the fire marshal's office to make sure they don't have any issues either. So that's again, these are all good things to bring up because as with the case with the movie theater, we got the movie theater amendment through because I got the police chief to basically write a letter saying it would pose no issue. And the commission was like, oh yeah, no issue. So we're good.
Right.
So the attorneys that did it before never thought of that. So it's, these are good things to bring up.
Can I bring up just one other municipal
Yep.
question? So one of my favorite restaurants is Flipside, and they have that patio area.
Yep.
Right now, I'm assuming that doesn't count to floor area ratio, correct?
Well, it is considered patron floor area. Yep.
Oh, it
That-
is.
that
So their
patio,
outdoor
yeah.
patio counts to floor area
In
ratio?
terms of calculating their parking load, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And
So
if
they may have enough parking on that space, or they got a variance at some point, which is to my, every restaurant downtown is pretty much operates with a variance. So
Gotcha. All right. So it triggers their parking requirement just because they'll have tables and chairs out there.
Mhm.
If they put up a tent, a semi-permanent tent, affixed into the floor, maybe removed, maybe not removed. Does that increase their floor area? Is that considered
No.
more floor area?
no, especially
Oh,
not under this scheme because it's
Okay.
like permanent seating then.
Okay, great.
All right. So did I get everyone? Oh, Colin had to leave. I'm sorry. So, but he was here for the vote. That was good. So thank you very much. That is, there's one other thing I want to, before I turn things over to Bev to provide a report. We do have space reserved at Fairfield University in the alumni house on the 22nd of January for a board retreat from 10 to 12. That's a Saturday. Depending on where the whole COVID thing goes, both in terms of what the university is doing or allowing in-person gatherings on campus at that time, as well as your comfort level. So I wanted to throw that out, make sure, folks were okay with that date. We can certainly push it back. I wanted to do it in January if I could. Obviously there's the possibility of inclement weather on top of things. But I was originally thinking an hour and a half to 2 hours. We gather for in the morning on a Saturday, get some, light breakfast stuff. Hopefully I can even have the president of Fairfield University say a few words if he's available, welcome, as well as maybe we'd have an opportunity to engage in a more in-depth conversation about the university's role in terms of promoting economic development, which I think the commission would find interesting. So I wanted to check to make sure that date worked for folks, at least at this point.
I'm good.
Okay. Okay. So I'll keep you posted. We're going to talk to the university next week, finalize plans as much as we can. They did tell us that, if they have to restrict folks from coming onto campus because of COVID, then we'll have to either find another venue, which we can do. We're a small group, so I don't think that'll be a problem, or just move it back. Again, if things are that bad, maybe we don't want to be gathering even a small group. To Justin's point, maybe we don't be gathering as a group in person if things are really that bad at that point. So I'll keep you posted. And with that, before I continue to drone on, I thought maybe I Beverly's with us, maybe she has some things to share with the group too. And I know you weren't able to attend the last meeting. So Beverly, I'll let you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Just a couple of things. We had scheduled our annual Economic Outlook breakfast for January 13th. We're moving that into February, hopefully for February 9th or 10th. I'm just waiting on Brenda for her approval for those dates. So we did switch that over to February, hoping that people maybe by then will feel comfortable coming together, and that will be held at the Patterson Club. Keynote speaker is John Trainer. He's works for People's United Bank. He's their economist, their chief investment officer. And he always gives a nice perspective of trends, what is going on globally. And then Brenda comes in as a keynote, and she talks a little bit more about the state and specific to Fairfield. So, it's an important event that we try to put together each year at the beginning of the year. So fingers crossed that we can in fact hold it on February 9th or 10th. So you can look for further information on that one. Next week, we will be, the town will be installing street banners for us. And the theme, each year the chamber does street banners from mid-January through March with the theme of shop local. And this year it will say Fairfield loves local. And this is really a nice reminder to the community that even though holidays are over, this buying season is over, so to speak, for December, it's just a nice visual reminder to our community and anyone passing up and down on Post Road or Mill Plain to continue to think that way and to continue to support our local businesses. So you'll be seeing those go up next week, and they're designed very nicely. So that's a continuation of our shop local themes, supporting our local businesses. I think, Mark, that's it for me at this point.
The other thing I'll add on to that from the Love Local or Buy Local campaign, we're redoing our Love Local bingo contest for the month of February into early March. It basically encourages people to frequent and patronize local business establishments, collect receipts, play bingo, and win prizes. We did it last year. It was well received by the businesses and the public. Since we had the infrastructure in place, there was overwhelming support for it from the business community. We decided to reprise that this year again. Under the circumstance, a good time for it with February and March, and for some of the restaurants that restaurant week doesn't really work for their business model or format. This is a better way to get them some local love. So we're putting that out. It's, we spent a lot of last year supporting our small business base, whether it's restaurants or mercantile establishments with we do these every year, these retail type initiatives working with the chamber and other partners. But I think last year in particular was very well received by the business community. They appreciate the support. And I guess, we'll continue to be doing that. So the holiday stroll was really well attended, and the response we got from the businesses was really overwhelmingly positive, similar to Restaurant Week. So I think all these things are part and parcel of our Buy Local, Support Local campaign, and a good part of our supporting our existing business base as part of our overall thrust of our economic development initiatives. The other thing we spent a lot of time, last year doing is supporting, doing community engagement, business engagement for some infrastructure projects that are either in design or planning stages, like the Post Road Circle Safety Study, the proposed streetscape enhancements to the Stratfield Four Corners intersection, Southport, some pedestrian improvements there, as well as in Grassmere neighborhood, all of which required some targeted business outreach and community engagement, which we support. In addition to that, some of these projects we were instrumental, this office was instrumental in securing grant funding for them. So Stratfield and the East Trunks sewer replacement, we're providing grant kind of fiduciary grant financial management, project administration services on top of the community engagement piece. So that's again an important component of what we do here and have been doing this past year. The one other thing I will point, we obviously saw some projects come to fruition last year, some larger development projects like Alto Fairfield Center and the Anchorage, which some of you attended. Those have a pretty significant, they're residential, but they had a pretty significant impact on our commercial, our grant list. We are in conversations now with the state of Connecticut on providing consent. There's an assignment clause in the existing three-party agreement for the development of Fairfield Metro. And as some of you may know, or hopefully we've talked about before, can't remember, but the property has been put on the market, is for sale. There is a sale pending to a new development entity out in New Jersey. I've met with them. I've reviewed or toured some of their facilities, developments that they've done in New Jersey, talked to communities in which they're active in. This is a pretty big project for them, but they've done similar scale projects, not in Connecticut. Again, we've had conversations with the state about their willingness to sign off on this transfer, the sale to this new development entity, and have a conversation with the deputy commissioner and his team on Friday with the development team. And I hope to be able to report back some good news at our retreat and February meeting, because the developer is anxious to move ahead and develop the project. And I think would like to make some revisions to the overall master plan, but is very interested in at least sticking a shovel in the ground this coming year in this construction season before going back to the drawing board and asking for additional modifications, which I think are well founded. I mean, one of my complaints, I like the previous development entity in many respects, but I thought even though their master plan did win approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was a feeling on my part, and I think others, that they may have left some meat on the bone, that there was more they could have leveraged the site better, made more efficient use of the site. And I think this developer, I challenged this developer to take a fresh look at it. And I think he's doing that. And I think he has a more exciting overall plan for the site that makes sense and does maximize the development potential of that property. So I'm hoping to report back some more information. Hopefully the conversation on Friday goes well, but that's going to be a major thrust next year, or well, not next year. We're in 2022 already, so this year. So, but with that, I'll pause. If there was anything else, that was kind of just a brief rundown. I'll provide a report to you on some of the other things that we were doing, but I wanted to just touch on a few of those highlights before we finish up today. So if there's any questions or comments or other areas you'd like to talk, I'm open now.
Pretty exciting stuff. That's great, Mark. Anyone else?
Any updates on Chick-fil-A?
Well, yeah, we didn't end 2021 on a high note in terms of, there was denials for whether, again, I'm not a big, I don't want to cast aspersions here on it, but, from an economic development perspective, terms of growing, if our goal is to grow the grand list, having a Chick-fil-A on that site doesn't really move the needle very much, which I think the commission recognizes is the reason why they didn't take a more active role in endorsing the project. But the developer has taken an appeal to the denial. So that's pending. I do intend to reach out to them to see whether or not they might entertain other development scenarios for the site that might have a bigger economic impact to the town.
Good.
He may or may not be interested in that, but based on where his, and I think some of you were privy to conversation we had where we're speculating as to the financing of that particular development site. But we'll see. I think, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I think that that's still out there, as is, 40 Hillside Weeks, which was the veterinary hospital up in Greenfield Hill. We expect them to resubmit an application, I hope, because I thought it was a good use for the site, but they obviously do need to revise their site plan, and hopefully that'll meet the approval of some of the abutting neighbors that had some concerns with regard to the initial plan. So it wasn't a great end of the year from a land use perspective, but hopefully, we can get some of these bigger projects like the crossings at Fairfield Metro actually in the ground. That would be a big step forward. I'm tired of talking about plans and designs and stuff like that. So
Are the developers more enthused with those apartments coming, they'll be done, I would imagine, by this summer.
what's that? Which one?
Those apartments nearby over like we're in
On the other side of
Yeah.
with Spinnaker's doing on Black Rock.
Yeah,
Yeah,
would
I
imagine
think I don't think there's any question that there's strong market demand for these types of residential developments. So he's betting big on that. I mean, this is the incoming developer, but we've stressed throughout that this is a mixed use project and there needs to be a commercial component. Hotel was included as part of the master plan. We think that's an important element. And so we think that it's still a lot of uncertainty as to the office market, but we do think there is some strength in the suburban office market going forward as businesses might want to diversify their risk and spread out, people accommodate workers that may not want to make the commute, long commutes. So, we think, again, everything's in moderation, but an appropriately scaled office development as part of the overall site plan makes sense. And so we've insisted that remain a component part of his plan.
Mark, that space that was along the railroad tracks, it's over by at the Metro site that was owned by another family. I'm remembering that family that was.
Yep, Reiner. Yep.
Yes, that's right. So what? Any plans on that?
Well, they had there was a local developer that had come in for a pre-application review with planning and zoning last year, and it was like 99% residential, and I think, and even though they had a public, they did some public space improvements which made it attractive to the commission. I think the commission was still looking for more street facing commercial. And so, but the bigger issue from that developer is working out an acceptable acquisition cost given the environmental issues for the site. It's pretty heavily contaminated site, so the remediation costs are pretty high.
Got it.
I hope to have some exciting news to share on the property next door at 111 Black Rock Turnpike in the near future. We're working with a prospective tenant that I think we've been talking to the property owner and to the broker and now DOT, because some of it they're looking for some improvements to facilitate access between Fairfield Metro Center site and 111 Black Rock, which is where the Planet Fitness is. So I think, again, it would be a great use for the site. So we're hopeful that that'll come to pass. But we play a small bit role. I think as you guys can appreciate, we don't control the site. We're not providing the financing for it, and so the best we can do is try to make sure that the regulatory scheme is in place, that they can do what they want to do. We make it easy for them to get through that process as efficiently as possible. So that's really our role in this, to put the deal together in that respect, the limited role, but it's an important one. But I don't want to overstate it.
Sounds like 2022 has a lot of promise.
Well, we always hope springs eternal. So we're always looking to do stuff. Yeah, keeps us busy. Anything else? Other sites burning anyone's attention or?
I'm gonna have to jump off in a minute. I have to start a meeting I'm leading at 9:30, but did we have to approve minutes from the previous meeting?
I think you did.
Oh, we did. All right.
Okay, so I think we can adjourn the meeting.
Yep, I'm good. I have everything I covered today. We'll follow up with some information about the retreat next week, and we'll go from there.
Great. And just another quick, Ken and Matt, thank you for joining in, and we look forward to hearing a lot more from you. You guys you knocked it out of the park already, which is great. You both added today. Beverly, always great to see you, and we look forward to seeing you at some Rotary events as well. And Don, thanks for coming back. Mark, thanks for all the leadership. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, we're adjourned at
Thanks, Kevin.
9:27. Thanks, guys.
Hey, bye.
Take
Bye.
care.